Welcome to another tournament style problem solving. So what we have here is a bishop endgame, obviously 5 versus 5 pawns. If we look at checks, none. We look at captures, there are none. So we can look at piece contacts. That means b6, b5, bishop b6, bishop b4, bishop c7, and also bishop e1. We also have h4 or g4. So subconsciously, good players rely on their endgame study. And in this endgame, if you look what's happening, the board situation is not as obvious. And that is, the dominant feature here is that the white bishop on the dark squares has very restricted mobility. So what we want to do is take advantage of his restricted mobility or prevent it from increasing. So h4 and g4 are terrible moves because they're going to end up, h4 allows g takes h, and he's got mobility now, extra mobility to the h6 square. g4, same story. So we don't want to do those if we can help it. That cuts us down. b6, he can just play either c6 or pawn takes. If he plays pawn takes, bishop takes, he gets bishop d2, and again, he's gaining mobility. I don't care for that. b5, same story. He can play en passant, or we can, he can play c6. I don't care for the pawn moves at all. This is on just the surface. Goes against my endgame instructions. So let's look at the bishop moves. Now, bishop b6 is a free bishop. That doesn't do anything. Not good, anyway. Bishop to b4 is a literal do-nothing move. It's not terrible. I would go through the other moves, but I'm going to do something different. And that is one of the techniques that will help you when you're stuck. Look where the last move left vacant. So in this case, you can see in yellow, bishop to e3 leaves f2 vacant. So I can play bishop to c7, attacking the g-pawn, or I can play bishop to e1, attacking the g-pawn. One of these is clearly superior. Well, and if it isn't clearly superior to you, that's fine. It will be clearly superior after this problem, I guarantee you. So, what happens if we go bishop to c7? Can he defend the pawn with his bishop or his king? His king is no, but his bishop is yes. Bishop to f2. So we didn't gain anything. So, if we go the other way, bishop to e1, the bishop left f2 to e3. So we go bishop to e1. How does he solve this problem? The answer is he doesn't. Once you find the right move in the key situation, how does he solve the problem? The answer becomes he does not. This is why I'm convinced this is the right move. So now, white is in trouble because black has attacked his biggest weakness. His move was to play pawn forward, and he might as well just resign. We just win a pawn. We're going to play essentially king to h3 and then just march that pawn straight up the board. Nothing much you could do about it. Ooh, c6. You might be asleep and allow me to take your pawn. So he sacks the bishop for the pawn, and you should have just resigned. Yeah. Every move white played could have been just said, instead, white resigns. Okay. So, that was tremendous. So, let's look at the other one. I had solved these problems without recording. Well, I made a mistake in recording. Let's put it that way. So I made a mistake in the recording, so I had to come back and do this after the fact. If you paid attention, you saw I got them all right. Okay. But I'm doing it to you. I'm doing it for you the way I did it originally. I've done this a couple of times. I don't like to do it. It kind of looks like it might be a setup. It isn't, because the problems are not pre-planned to my knowledge. You see them randomly in front of your face and you have to solve them. But whatever. So, okay. He played rook takes d4, which looks like a good move. So, looks here, it's like, if you look at this, the face value, we're attacking his king with our queen and hopefully our rook if we can get into it. And when I look at this, I said, this looks like a really great example of the thing I use. And I even made a video about this called the brute force technique. And the brute force technique is exactly what the name says, is a brute force. Let's just go straight charging forward and see where this leads us. Okay, so queen to h8, check. We're trying to checkmate this guy, right? Queen h8 check, king e7 only move. Rook e1 check. Now what does he do? If he goes to like king d7, we have queen to e8 check, and we're on him like white on rice. Okay, that's not good. So clearly, king moves new. Well, he can interpose. That means rook to e4. Now queen is on h8. So rook to e4 is a solid, and in fact, it is an awesome move. So queen h8 check, king e7, rook e1 check, rook e4. This is not good for white. So this is where the brute force technique shows us what black's best defensive move is. So we want to play moves that will stop it. Clearly, rook takes rook stops it, but we're throwing forces away, and it makes a checkmate virtually impossible with just queens once he escapes. So rook takes rook's not the move. However, rook to e1 prevents rook to e4. That's the move he wants to play defensively, is to oppose our rook. So what happens if we go, it's the same question as the last problem. Once we play our move, rook to e1, what's he going to do? How can he solve the problem? And the answer is, he's going to get checkmated. He's going to have to try and make room for his king. So the only move he can do that, g6 does nothing. He just gets checkmated by queen h8. So f6 allows that theoretical chance, but it doesn't work. And you'll see why. This is where my spidey senses told me that f6 wasn't going to work. And it doesn't work two different ways. So, as I predicted, okay, so now we have cut him off. He could not play rook e4, so he has to make an opening. Check. So we make the check move. Now he has two moves. He can play queen to g8, or he can play king to f7. If king to f7, what is your reply? Pause the video if you need to, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So if black plays king f7, hopefully you guys said, dude, I got this, queen e8 check. That's checkmate, actually. So if he plays queen to g8, we have a different solution. And if you don't see that one, pause the video and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back again. If he plays queen to g8, hopefully you saw the deflection move or decoy of rook to e8 check. Now, I covered both solutions. Let's see what the computer played. Queen to g8. So remember what I said? If you didn't catch this, it doesn't matter. You're learning this, and this is a super technique. Whenever a king puts a rook or a bishop or whatever, usually it's a rook or a queen. You hit him on the opposite side with a rook. Some cases a queen, but usually it's the rook who does it. This draws him away from his defended piece because there's an X-ray effect from the rook going through the king to the queen. We're doubly attacking this queen. If he moves king to f7, we just take it. Either way, queen or rook takes. You can share your choice. You're going to win a queen for nothing. So he has to capture. And then we capture. And then he resigns. That's how it works. You win his queen for a rook, you pretty much is going to resign. Nothing left. Okay, so now let's go to the last problem. Dun. I played b2, trying to make a queen and crush us. So, we got to be on the ball. So to me, I don't look at, the whole scenario of moves. If you do, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with looking at checks, captures, piece contacts, board situation. To me, when you see the pieces hovering around the king side, the rook on f8, the knight over on h4, we're at a king attack. We're trying to checkmate this guy, most likely. So let's just look at what I call the brute force technique again. g6 check. Okay, g6 check. King h6, forced, only move, great. Rook h8 check. King g5. And Krudsky, he's escaping. So what happens is like the brute force technique fails in one regard but succeeds in the other regard. The area where it fails is it fails to directly checkmate this guy, but it shows us where he will go to escape. So we need to make a move to stop his escape, much like we made rook to e1 to prevent that rook to going to e4. We're going to play another move to stop this king. So we could play the move that would stop when he goes. We go g6 check, king h6, rook checks, king g5. We need to stop this king from going to g5. And the most obvious move is king to g4. Obvious being efficient. And knight f3, he would just take our knight. And well, actually, he would be worse. He would play rook a3, pinning it, swapping all the pieces, queening, and we're dust. So we can't do knight to f3. So king e4, king g4 is the move. But we can't play king to g4 first. What if we play king to g4 first? What should black do? You may need to pause the video to figure this out. Give yourself a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So if white plays king to g4, which is not the right move, black has this great resource g6. It allows him to get to g7 and essentially escape because he can overpower the rook. One-on-one, the rook cannot hold him indefinitely in that corner. So we need to cut him off of g6 and then play g4 or king g4. So here's the move. Wait, g6 check. King h6 is forced. And now the double crusher, king to g4. He's gone. There's nothing he can do. We're going to play rook h8 check, and he's checkmated. There's no changing that. And he makes a queen. Hooray. Thanks for the game, my brother. So, look at this again. These last two problems were terrific examples of my technique called brute force. Using brute force, we found that he's going to escape through g5. G6 check, king h6, rook h8, king g5. He escapes. We're in bad shape because he's about to queen the pawn. That's his move. So, objectively, instead of b2, he should have played g6. But I'm just saying, that's what should have happened. Okay, he made a mistake, and we capitalized on it. So, in this position, what came to my mind was like back in the 70s, I would work on my bike. Flat tire happened. So I had to fix the inner tube or buy a new one. Well, I didn't have the money to buy a new one, so it was cheaper to fix it. So when you have an inner tube with a hole in it, the way you find the hole is to fill the tube with air and use a bucket and then run the tube through the bucket until you see bubbles come out of wherever. And once you find where the bubbles come out of, that's where you know the hole is at. And that's what happens here when we played G6, King H6, Rook H8. He's coming out like air escaping the bubble. I mean, escaping the bicycle tire. G6, King H6, Rook H8. His bubble is escape route goes to G5. So much like using the water bucket to find the bubbles of air escaping from the inner tube, we hit him with G6 check, King H6, and then we found where the air is going to G5. We cut off the air, which is what the patch on the tire inner tube does. This is the patch that saves the tire. So this is an analogy of a common everyday occurrence. Well, not every day, but it happens across the world on a daily basis. So the brute force technique can be quite helpful, even though it can fail to directly finish the guy off. It shows you where his king, the heir, is escaping. And once we find out where the heir is escaping, or would like to escape, perhaps is a better phrase, we're able to move in and patch the hole. In this case, we patched the hole with King G4. So, 3 terrific problems. But to me, the last 2 were really outstanding because they allowed me to really give you guys just letter perfect brute force technique explanations. So I hope you enjoyed these problems. They were really good. Like the video. Comment. Tell me what you saw, how much this helped you. Subscribe so you'll get new notifications of future awesome videos. You guys know what to do. I'll talk to you later.